The Padre Pio stigmata, 50 years of wounds that defied medicine for 50 years. A friar bore the wounds of crucifixion, examined by Vatican physicians, documented until the day they vanished without scars. Long before dawn on September 20, 1918, in a small friary chapel in southern Italy, a 31-year-old Capuchin priest kneels in prayer before a wooden crucifix. Francesco Forgiani, known in religious life as Padre Pio, completes his morning meditation as he has done countless times before. But on this particular morning, something happens that will mark him physically for the next 5 decades and place him at the center of one of the most extensively documented investigations of claimed divine encounter in modern Catholic history. The friar later describes the experience in letters to his spiritual director. A vision appears before him, a mysterious figure with rays of light emanating from wounds in the hands, feet, and side. As the vision fades, Padre Pio discovers that his own body now bears corresponding wounds. Blood seeps through the thin brown fabric of his Franciscan habit. The stigmata, the 5 wounds of Christ's crucifixion, have manifested on his body. What distinguishes this case from hundreds of other claimed stigmata throughout Christian history is not the initial appearance of the wounds, but what happens next. The wounds do not heal, they do not close. They do not scar over in the normal progression of tissue repair. For the next 50 years, until 3 days before Padre Pio's death in 1968, the wounds remain open, documented by photograph, witnessed by thousands, and examined by multiple physicians whose reports create an unprecedented medical record. The first formal medical examination occurs in May 1919, 8 months after the stigmata's appearance. Dr. Luigi Romanelli, chief physician at the City Hospital of Barletta, conducts a thorough examination of the wounds. His official report describes circular lesions approximately 2 centimeters in diameter on both palms, penetrating completely through the hands. Similar wounds mark both feet. A linear wound approximately 7 centimeters long appears on the left side of the chest. Romanelli notes that the wounds show no signs of infection despite their exposed nature, and no normal healing process appears to be occurring. He cannot explain the wounds through any conventional medical framework. The Vatican responds to the growing attention surrounding Padre Pio with institutional caution rather than immediate endorsement. The Holy Office, the Vatican department responsible for defending Catholic doctrine, launches the first of many investigations. The Church's position reflects a theological tradition stretching back centuries. Genuine mystical phenomena require rigorous verification, and extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. The line between authentic divine encounter and psychological pathology, between genuine miracle and pious fraud, must be carefully discerned. In 1920, the Vatican sends Professor Agostino Gemelli to examine Padre Pio. Gemelli holds impeccable credentials. He is both a medical doctor specializing in neurology and a Franciscan friar. His examination produces a skeptical report. Gemelli attributes the stigmata to neurosis, suggesting that Padre Pio's wounds result from psychological factors rather than supernatural intervention. The report influences Vatican policy for years, contributing to restrictions placed on Padre Pio's ministry. But other physicians reach different conclusions. Dr. Giorgio Festa examines Padre Pio multiple times between 1919 and 1925, producing detailed reports with photographic documentation. Festa describes wounds that remain consistently present, neither healing nor worsening, maintaining their appearance year after year in defiance of normal tissue behavior. He notes the absence of suppuration, the lack of inflammatory response, and the wound's resistance to standard medical explanation. The investigation extends beyond simple medical examination. The Vatican wants to understand the broader pattern of claimed phenomena surrounding this friar in southern Italy. Reports accumulate from witnesses describing events that strain conventional explanation. Multiple people claim to have encountered Padre Pio in locations far from San Giovanni Rotondo, while others simultaneously witness him in the friary. These accounts of bilocation, appearing in two places at once, come from credible witnesses, including military personnel during World War II. The reported phenomena include a persistent fragrance of flowers that people claim to detect in Padre Pio's presence or associated with his intercession, even when no flowers are nearby. This odor of sanctity appears in traditional Catholic mystical literature, but witnesses in the 20th century describe experiencing it in connection with Padre Pio. Some reports come from people who later testify they detected the scent before learning about Padre Pio, or while praying for his intercession hundreds of miles from San Giovanni Rotondo. Padre Pio's work in the confessional generates its own documentation. Thousands of penitents report that the friar demonstrates knowledge of their sins and life circumstances that he could not have acquired through normal means. These accounts accumulate from people across all social classes: peasants and professors, laborers and lawyers, simple faithful and sophisticated skeptics. The consistency of testimony from diverse sources creates a documentary record that investigators must address. The Vatican's response to these accumulating reports reflects institutional ambivalence. Between 1922 and 1933, church authorities placed significant restrictions on Padre Pio's ministry. He is forbidden to celebrate Mass publicly, prohibited from hearing confessions, and subjected to various limitations on his priestly activities. These restrictions do not constitute condemnation, but reflect the Church's cautious approach to extraordinary claims. The theological tradition holds that genuine mystical gifts should produce humility, obedience, and spiritual fruit, and that both the person claiming such gifts and the Church evaluating them must proceed with careful discernment. Throughout these restrictions, the stigmata remain. Decade after decade, the wounds persist in their unexplained state. Padre Pio covers his hands with fingerless gloves to conceal the wounds during his daily activities, but thousands of witnesses observe them during Mass when he elevates the consecrated host. Photographers document the wounds at various points across the 50-year period. The medical literature grows as additional physicians examine and report on this case that defies standard medical categories. Skeptical investigators propose naturalistic explanations. Joe Nickel, a prominent skeptical researcher, suggests that Padre Pio maintained the wounds through self-application of carbolic acid, a corrosive substance available during the period. Nickel points to a letter in which Padre Pio requested carbolic acid, though supporters note the letter predates the stigmata and that such substances had legitimate medical uses in that era. The self-infliction theory must account for the wound's consistency across 50 years, their bilateral symmetry, and the multiple witness testimonies of their appearance. The documented healings attributed to Padre Pio's intercession create another layer of investigation. Medical records describe cases where individuals with diagnosed conditions experience unexpected recovery after encountering Padre Pio or praying for his intercession. These cases range from minor ailments to serious diseases. Some healings occur in Padre Pio's physical presence. Others are reported by people who wrote letters requesting his prayers or who visited San Giovanni Rotondo after experiencing recovery. The friary in San Giovanni Rotondo becomes a pilgrimage destination during Padre Pio's lifetime. People travel from across Italy and eventually from around the world to attend his Mass, seek his blessing, or go to confession with him. The crowds grow so large that church authorities must organize schedules and limitations. Padre Pio's confessional ministry extends for hours each day, hearing the confessions of hundreds of penitents who wait in long lines for the opportunity. In 1947, Padre Pio begins advocating for the construction of a hospital in San Giovanni Rotondo. The Casa Sollievo della Sofferenza, House for the Relief of Suffering, opens in 1956, funded by donations from around the world. The modern medical facility serves the region and stands as a concrete legacy of Padre Pio's concern for the suffering. The hospital operates to this day, treating thousands of patients annually. As the decades pass, Vatican attitudes gradually shift. The restrictions on Padre Pio's ministry are lifted. The earlier skepticism gives way to careful acknowledgement that something genuinely extraordinary surrounds this friar. Pope Pius XII, Pope John XXII, and Pope Paul VI each demonstrate increasing openness to Padre Pio, though formal canonization remains decades away. Then, in September 1968, 50 years after the stigmata first appear, something remarkable occurs. 3 days before Padre Pio's death on September 23, witnesses report that the wounds, which have remained open and visible for half a century, begin to close. By the time of his death at age 81, the stigmata have completely disappeared. The hands, feet, and side that bore open wounds for 50 years show no scars, no marks, no indication that the tissue was ever anything other than normal skin. Medical personnel who examined Padre Pio's body after death find no trace of the stigmata. The wounds that resisted normal healing for 5 decades have vanished entirely, leaving no physical evidence of their 50-year presence. Supporters interpret this disappearance as a final miraculous sign. Skeptics note that the removal of the wounds eliminates the possibility of post-mortem medical examination that might have provided additional data about their nature. The funeral draws enormous crowds. Thousands of people fill the streets of San Giovanni Rotondo to pay respects to the friar who bore the stigmata for half a century. But Padre Pio's story does not end with his burial. Reports of miraculous healings attributed to his intercession continue and multiply. People from around the world write letters describing unexpected recoveries, answered prayers, and experiences they attribute to Padre Pio's continuing intercession. The Vatican reopens investigation of Padre Pio's life and claimed miracles, this time for purposes of canonization rather than restriction. The process requires verification of miracles attributed to his intercession and examination of his life for evidence of heroic virtue. Medical committees review cases of claimed healings. Theological experts examine his writings and the testimony about his spiritual life. The investigation proceeds with the same institutional caution that characterized earlier Vatican responses, but now directed toward potential recognition rather than containment. In 1999, Pope John Paul II beatifies Padre Pio before a crowd of hundreds of thousands in St. Peter's Square. 3 years later, in 2002, the same pope canonizes him as Saint Pio of Pietrelcina. The canonization ceremony draws approximately 300,000 people, one of the largest such gatherings in modern Vatican history. The friar, who spent years under church restrictions, receives full recognition as a saint whose life demonstrated genuine encounter with the divine. The San Giovanni Rotondo Shrine becomes one of the most visited pilgrimage sites in the Catholic world. Approximately 7 million pilgrims visit annually, coming from every continent to pray at the tomb of Padre Pio, to visit the church where he celebrated Mass, to walk the grounds where he lived for decades. The pilgrimage statistics place San Giovanni Rotondo among the top Catholic pilgrimage destinations globally, comparable to Lourdes and Fatima in visitor numbers. The medical documentation of Padre Pio's stigmata remains unique in the literature of claimed mystical phenomena. No other case of stigmatization has been photographed, examined by multiple physicians, and documented across such an extended period. The reports describe wounds that behaved unlike any normal tissue injury, neither healing nor becoming infected, neither improving nor deteriorating, remaining in a medically inexplicable state for 50 years before vanishing without trace. John McCaffrey's biography, The Friar of San Giovanni, published in 1978, compiles extensive eyewitness testimony from people who knew Padre Pio. See Bernard Ruffin's Padre Pio. The True Story, published in 1982, presents a comprehensive account drawing on Vatican archives and interview sources. These works, along with numerous other books, articles, and academic studies, create a substantial literature examining this case from perspectives ranging from devotional to skeptical. The theological questions surrounding Padre Pio's stigmata touch fundamental issues about the relationship between physical phenomena and spiritual reality. Catholic mystical theology distinguishes between genuine divine action and various forms of deception or delusion. The tradition acknowledges that extraordinary phenomena can result from divine grace, demonic deception, or psychological pathology, and that careful discernment requires examining the fruits of such phenomena in the person's life and their conformity to authentic spiritual teaching. Padre Pio's case presents investigators with multiple layers of claimed phenomena beyond the stigmata itself. The bilocation reports, the confessional knowledge, the healings, the reported fragrance. Each category requires separate evaluation. Skeptical explanations must account for the consistency of testimony across thousands of witnesses over decades. Believers must address the legitimate questions about verification, alternative explanations, and the possibility of embellishment in popular accounts. The 50-year duration of the stigmata distinguishes this case from brief or intermittent manifestations reported in other instances. The wound's sudden disappearance 3 days before death, leaving no scars, adds another element requiring explanation. The extensive medical documentation creates an evidentiary record unavailable for most historical claims of mystical phenomena. Today, millions of people worldwide report experiences they attribute to Padre Pio's intercession. Prayer groups dedicated to seeking his help exist on every continent. The literature of claimed healings and answered prayers continues to grow. Whether these experiences reflect genuine supernatural intervention or the power of faith and human psychology remains a question that evidence can inform, but perhaps never definitively resolve. What remains undisputed is the historical fact that a Capuchin friar in southern Italy bore visible wounds on his hands, feet, and side for 50 years, that these wounds were examined and documented by multiple physicians, that they resisted medical explanation, and that they disappeared completely before his death. The interpretation of these facts divides along lines of worldview and methodology, but the documented events themselves constitute one of the most thoroughly investigated claims of sustained mystical phenomena in the modern era. If you found this case compelling, subscribe to Vanishing Roads for more documented paranormal investigations from around the world. This story was created with AI assistance based on documented case files. All events reference real investigations and reported incidents.